Okay, so as many of us know, back in May, there were some um random user notes that were added during patron load, and we discussed a few weeks ago now that there is a configuration setting that you can change in order to um, prevent those notes from being added. It had to do with the um, addition of a profile name of patron, and so everybody ended up with these notes. And Ex Libris does not have a specific um, API um, to do that. So there are a couple different sets of instructions online from folks who have made this work. And I uh I tried out like both of them. I tried to figure out like what was the most replicable, I guess you could say, between institutions without changes, that kind of thing, since we're essentially looking at the same note text that we would want to be deleting in bulk. So I was taking a look at Blake's documentation um, to figure out kind of what it was that he was doing with his code. I don't want to use PowerShell because it's just significantly overpowered for kind of like what we're doing. And I think what we're doing we can do with kind of a more bare bones terminal. Um, but anyway, so Blake has written up these notes for the process, and he goes through some fairly like universal parts that can apply to this issue of the patron profile thing that we ended up with. Um, the first thing that he has in his instructions is to have the list of user IDs that are affected. And so the way that you can do that is using the advanced search. You can do user note and then contains keywords or contains the phrase. And this is in the sandbox because I did not want to mess anybody up. And so I did the keyword of profile um, and get my two fake accounts that I created and my own account. So we've got two that are internal and one that is external. We're not going to mess with the internal ones because that's not what we're concerned with in the real life situation. So we have Farah, and we're going to take the primary identifier, and I've got that here. I've got the note already copied out um, here from notes. And then I would save these as a text file and record the path. And this is how you do the bulk of it, right? Because most people are not going to have one person with a note that they want to delete because you could just go in and do that. We are talking about the, like, oh, and 8,000 students now have these notes that are useless and distracting. So you would do an export from your advanced search, and then you could just um, save the results with the primary IDs um, as a TXT file. Uh, but again, we're getting to a whole different level here. So anyway, then you make sure that you have your file path. So, like C, your user, Carly H, documents, uh, API, and user IDs.txt. The URL base for everyone is the same. This is our North America um, API URL, and then the parameters. Now, parameters is where there's some discrepancy between Blake's instructions and other people's instructions, but his seemed the like most simple. Yes. Uh, there's the link to the delete user notes from Alma document, which is available freely on the Orbis Cascade website in their API documentation section. Um, so then you have your API key, which many of you may not have, and we may not actually have a key correctly set up for user details read and write. And then the string that you want to delete. And so that is where we would do this like profile name, patron, profile ID. But then we also have these variables. And there is a way to deal with that as well. So he was trying to remove a note that was the same. And so he set that string equal to the quotation mark CL, RTR, and D, blah, blah, blah. Now, as far as running the API, Blake used Microsoft PowerShell, which is significant and hefty. And so I am trying to figure out if we can just do it with Postman, which is a web-based JSON API, REST API thing, so that uh, it doesn't require you to get into PowerShell. So I'm testing, and Postman doesn't. Postman just uses a URL thing. It doesn't use the full variable. So you have to construct the URL. So then I had to figure out, well, how does Ex Libris want the URL constructed? And this is where I went in and I am using a sandbox API key. I am not messing with anyone's live versions right now. But my hope is that I could essentially create the URL and it with the text file of your specific user IDs and then your specific API key for your user details read write. I could run this process essentially, unlimited times, very replicable. So in order to figure out how Ex Libris wants those URLs constructed, I went into the dev network to the API console. I'm signed in through Bellevue because Bellevue is one of the sandboxes that we have, Everett and Big Bend being the other two. And I created a sandbox API. I then looked at all of these guys, and it's the update user details API that Blake used. And this is where I'm starting to configure the full URL that would do that work of deleting in bulk. So the unique identifier for the user in this case isn't a full path because I have the single ID of my fake person in the sandbox. But if you were using a file, that is where I will put in the, /documents /users /institution.txt. This is optional, but all unique does match what Blake has in here. So user ID, all unique. And then the field that we are trying to override is user note. The send pin number letter being set to false and the recalculate roles and all of this means that roles and rules and all the rest of it aren't going to change. And then if you have multiple libraries within your institution, this might be applicable depending on how you are using the API, but it is optional, so I'm not entering anything there. Now, the request, this is the code that is going to take like the finagling, because this is where I will merge Blake's coding that he created for PowerShell and put it into this XML field to see if I can get it to work with the Sandbox API. So they actually, Ex Libris provided a full request body on this one. And I could clear this all out. But anyway, I deleted everything but user note in here to see what would happen. And when I hit execute, what it does is it gives me a curl and a request URL. The curl is, I believe, what would go into Postman or some of the other REST API programs that could be downloaded, whereas this request URL can just be put into a browser. So I went ahead and tested it to see what would happen. So this is that whole thing. You can see it's got the key, it's got the parameters, and if we go up here, it's got the user ID, and ta-da, this is what happened. It pulled an XML record of Farah Archeron's user data, and it's, like, yep, it's all there. So I've definitely got the beginning of the URL. It is functional. It is connecting with the sandbox. So now I basically have to figure out the code that goes here. Like I have to convert this and put it here, and that will then get embedded in that URL, and I'll then be able to, by swapping out the file paths and the institutional APIs, delete those notes that look like the profile ID, profile name, patron, profile ID that showed up back in May. So kind of long story short is that I am surprisingly further along than I probably should have been, given how very little I knew about this process when I started investigating it in the middle of last week. And what I've learned leads me to believe that this is something that I would, because you don't want your APIs out there floating around, because you can obviously do quite a bit of changes or deletions or etc. to your records in your production environment. I would be testing extensively in the sandbox, and then if you had if you wanted this deletion of notes to happen for your institution, you would do an extract of the file, an export of the file of users that have those notes, and then I would run it for you. And I'd probably, like start with one user at a time too, just like I did with this one, just to make sure it works everywhere. But I think it isn't unreasonable to think that by the end of the month, and really I'm giving myself a lot of time here because I never know what other support requests are going to come in. But by the end of the month, I think I should have this process nailed down. So if you are interested in having those notes erased in bulk from your institution, you can go ahead and pull that list of users and export it and send it on over to me, and I will just start stashing them in a folder so that I can get those cleaned out.
Carly,
Mhm.
since the list has, what is it, PPI, the combination of student name and it's got student IDs in it. Like
It
what?
So all you need to send me are the primary IDs.
Okay, got
So
it.
you can completely, so your final, okay, so hold on, I'm just gonna do everybody's.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no, no, I don't. Okay, fine. I just want some users to export. There's just not a lot of users. Okay, so you get a list. You export. You can do all fields because you want the primary ID. Open it up. And well, no, I need the primary ID.
Oh, you may have to do that through Alma Analytics.
Yeah, extended import.
Ah.
Yeah, I was like, it's one of them. It's not current view, but it's one of them. Because I've done it. I was like, I've done this before. No, okay. So you might have to do it through Alma Analytics.
No,
So that
that
will
did
most.
have the primary identifier.
It did?
It was just that the primary identifiers for those
Two
users
people
are
are
not numbers.
names, and I just glanced over them. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So all you can basically, if you don't want to even convert it to XML because you're like, I don't quite know what she's talking about there, you could just, well, it's not enable editing, thanks. You can literally just send me that.
Okay.
And then, yeah, you're not transmitting anything that has names and numbers in it. You can also, if you're concerned, particularly if you're an institution that has been hacked recently, or if you've got an IT department that is just exceptionally cautious, you can I can give you the instructions on how to transmit this file to the Ex Libris secure server, and then I can just go and take it off of that. So it wouldn't even go through email, because everybody has access to that server. You all have, what do they call them? It's not like an instance. You have a directory on that server. Every institution does. It's completely free, and almost everybody already has that integration set up, and it's quite easy to send a file over there, and have it be secure. So, um, yeah, so if you're interested in that, I can also help you do it that way. But I only need primary identifier. I don't need anything else. So you can do an extended export and then delete every other column. Um, and then you basically just take those identifiers and paste them into a text file and hit save and, be like, Bellevue sandbox users. And you might want to date it if, if you've got multiple user lists floating around. Yes, if you send me a list of primary IDs, then by the end of this month, I am fairly confident that I will have that job figured out and I will delete the notes, because trying to um, give everybody access to those APIs would be problematic, I think. And it's going to take some finagling and quite a bit of sandbox testing. So, but ultimately, so this is a thing that I would do for you. There are other very cool things that you can do through the API console. So this is just an example of like the user detail ones, but there are many other applications, like getting call numbers based on barcodes, or there's a one where you can do something with um, moving portfolios in electronic collections, if you need to do that. It's so difficult. Many times there's these great, cool sounding things that you can use APIs for, but you're like, yes, but I would like an example of like why you would do that. Um, so where is it? But one of the things that I did was, so I did like Ex Libris, Alma, API, and I was looking at user stuff. Um, but the Orbis Cascade, and I have a couple of these sites, they have mostly the Ex Libris documentation, but then you can also see um, the get call number from barcode documentation that one of their users has created. Um, somebody uses a PHP and APIs to print um, this pickup slips. This is the one, the delete user notes from patron records. This one, if you've got like if at some point a bunch of people got coded as staff and need to be moved to public because you want everybody to be public, then like you can use an API to um, change that. And I might actually be using some of this to try and figure out um, the note deletion as well. There's Primo things. So exporting a really big list from Primo. So this might be one we want to explore in the future. So what I would recommend if you're truly interested in figuring out APIs is to go to the dev network. You can even just have like a guest one, and you can play in um, you can get an API key and go to the API console, and it will allow you to kind of go to these different things and check things out. So like, um, what that one was under. Yeah, so it got me on Guest Sandbox because I don't have an API key for Bellevue for Primo, so it like just gave me that one. Um, and so say you've got a faculty member who wants all of their favorites. Um, and you can pull that, but this one's yeah. But just starting to play with that, I can also share some of the API like instructional articles and the different services that I will be using to create this. So like Postman, um, which is actually I think I already had it. There we go. So you can download it, but you can also just use it um on the web. Um, so and you can use it with Visual Studio Code, which I'll probably also be using Visual Studio Code because I use that a lot to inspect the patron load files and other website code. So yeah, being able to send API requests from within that is very good visual tool. Um, I'm not the whole thing is like the command line calls is what you have to do if you're going to use Microsoft PowerShell, and that's when it just gets a little complicated. And Blake is quite talented. Um and I'm also going to reach out to him in the next couple days and just be like, "Hey, this is where I'm at. Like, what do you think?" Um so uh yeah, you can see it gets a little crazy when you're trying to do that. So, um, anyway, so that is um as far as I was able to get for today's call. Um, and I'm really looking forward to being able to get this working and do this bulk delete job for you guys. And I think in getting this working, I will also just learn a lot so that if we do have an idea for a specific project that would involve APIs, we could put together a little group who wants to work on it with me and learn more, and and we could do that. So it is a deep, deep well of technological knowledge that I had not skimmed the surface of beforehand. Um, so that'll be fun. Um, so we do have some time. It's only 10:30. If anyone has um, a, an issue they'd like to bring to the group for a little bit of troubleshooting. We've got a good sized group today for that. Otherwise, if you've got a busy day ahead of you and now is your chance to grab that extra cup of coffee, please feel free to take that time and that breath for yourself.
Carly, this is Elena from Skagit. I have had a long-standing issue that I don't know if anybody else is interested in. If not, maybe just you and I can meet to go over it. a long time ago, I tried to set up an integration with OCLC to get our records, like our deletions, updated and stuff like that automatically. And it has like never worked right. And I've never really taken the time to like troubleshoot it and see what is going on. And I'm just wondering if integrations might be something at some point that we can talk about.
Yeah, I definitely had OCLC integration as well as Google Scholar on my list following Eluna because there were quite a few sessions about that. Um, I think it's kind of a thing where if you've set it up and it's not working, it might be a one-on-one troubleshooting um, versus, oh, we've not done this before. Let's all set it up together. Um, but it's a tricky one because, like, I don't have access to people's OCLC accounts. Um, but some of you I know are pretty good with your OCLC records. Perhaps um, you might just raise your hand or uh, volunteer to maybe be a called on resource. All right. Too early in the morning, perhaps.
Carly,
Yeah.
just something, I don't know, I'm really behind on Watchbook stuff, so, but in the future, it may be worthwhile to visit letters in general.
Yeah.
The various features of letters and how we might be able to get rid of some people regarding our, oh, what do you call it? Student agreement form, that kind of thing for technology, specifically our laptops. I don't know how everybody else is doing that, but that might be a worthwhile conversation in the future if it's not already on the books.
Yeah, we've had quite a few issues with letters in the not distant past with the new interface. It's been kind of weird. And I do think there's um a lot there that we could dig into. And I'm very interested because Big Bend uses they have like the user agreement for laptops, and I'm like, there's gotta be a way to get it like electronic to start with.
Yeah,
Um,
and then on top of that, we have it out and we're having to have them fill out. Our AG a couple of years ago had them change, and so literally they have to fill it out every time they check something out. Which is in our case daily, because we have a 24-hour checkout period, which is a lot of staff time, a lot of student time. And then on top of that, you have the permit issue in terms of just random student IDs, phone numbers, all of that stuff being, readily physically available to anybody. I mean, granted, it's only student workers and us that walk by, but there was just a permit issue in terms of having that stuff out and available. And then there's a library privacy issue of, okay, we're tracking, this count is tracking patron checkouts. If we don't get rid of it right away and can't get to the paperwork and this and that. So
I push back really hard on that. We're still doing the term long checkouts. We do not require any signed agreement at all. Pre-COVID, one of the libraries was doing a signed agreement, but it was per academic term. So you signed it for the academic term, and then it was kept on file, which, as you know, is a FERPA issue.
yeah, Big Bend is a one-time sign, but it's a physical piece of paper, which they are then scanning, and then they are attaching it to the Alma record, and then they're having to then like shred the piece of paper and delete the scanned file after it's attached to the record. But I was just noticing actually like last night, I was on the public library website, Spokane Public Library, and they now have a library of things user agreement where you just like go in, read it, click that you've read it, and then it's on your file. And I'm like, that's gotta be a thing that Alma can figure out. Like, we've got to be able to do that. So that could be quite an undertaking. I think OCLC integration would be a phenomenal like workshop training topic. We do have another like training scheduled. Let me see when it is. And I didn't like, nope, that's not what, nope, stop. Did it kick me? Okay. Uh tried to start Zoom again. So we've got another one that's kind of open topic on Tuesday, November 14th, and then a final one of this quarter on Tuesday, December 12th. So that's I think OCLC integration could be fairly manageable in a we've never set it up and you want to or you just want to start over. And if you want to troubleshoot it, let's make an appointment and take a look at stuff together. And we'll figure it out. So, any regarding FERPA, because Tracy asked in chat, having student IDs and phone numbers and names just in multiple places in uncontrolled environments, passing through the hands of, student workers, staff, that it can just, get lost, that's just the general FERPA issue because, it's extra places for that information to get out in the open. I think is probably mostly what Kirsty is thinking.
Yes. Yep, can confirm. Yeah, like if you're going to have this on a piece of paper somewhere, it needs to be stored in a locked place that only authorized people have access to. And no, no.
Yeah, it puts such a burden on everyone in the library trying to manage that information. FERPA aside, just personal data and how much community colleges and colleges in general have become targets of data attacks. Yeah, not great. Well, these are excellent ideas, and I'm loving the chat because that's definitely giving me places to investigate. So if anyone else wants to throw in your OCLC issues into chat, then I can kind of review those as notes. And let's go ahead and tentatively say that the November training in about a month we'll take a look at OCLC integrations. And then if anyone in the meantime would like to give me a tutorial on connection client, I'm totally down. So I've got OCLC training on my personal development plan for the next year because it is not somewhere where my formal education went, and it's not been my experience so far, but I'm very interested to understand it better. So, letters. For years, I've been meaning to get rid of barcodes on the pick from shelf letters so they print on a single sheet of paper. Oh yeah, just like
Yeah, and
those little formatting things to be like,
And I don't mean the item barcodes. Like there's 3 different barcodes that show up on the stupid letter. There's the letter ID barcode, and like
Yeah.
it's annoying.
I'm writing down because I want to go look at it because now I'm curious. Because
You can look
my
at
years as a page, I'm like, I've seen a lot of pick lists. I want to see what yours
like
looks like.
part of me just wants to tell my libraries, we've got all these Chromebooks. Just take a Chromebook out into the stacks and
And yeah, and just
just
read the
don't
list.
even print stuff.
Yeah, right. But the satisfaction of crossing it off is um okay. Thank you so much. If anyone else wants to throw anything into chat for me to take a look at, OCLC and letters seems like 2 great places to look at specific problems, and also kind of have a widely applicable tutorial kind of session. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thursday morning, we have our LibKey demonstration. Later this afternoon, I will be sending out those event invites, the ICS, the calendar links. And then Thursday afternoon, there is no meeting. Our Thursday afternoons are like the sometimes meetings. And then if you're not going to join us for LibKey, I'll hopefully see you next week.